Productive Discourse. Productive Discourse is a place where we talk about the positive activities that take place within our community. In other words, we're constantly searching for a shining needle of common ground in that haystack of fear. Today, we're continuing our episodes on Alameda Park League Baseball. Alameda Park League Baseball was a t-shirt league that took place in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and actually went a little bit into the 1990s. It was a great league where a lot of us got our start playing baseball and just had great fun with our friends. Our guests today are two Alameda Park League alumni, John and Phil Canelin. You played at Longfellow Park, right?
That is
yes,
correct.
sir.
And had some great times. They played about the time I played in the 1960s. And John and Phil, welcome to Productive Discourse.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Steve. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Well, we're
Steve,
really-
thanks a lot. I assume that I am the haystack and John is the needle.
That's
But
great.
I am representing.
You're representing. All right. You know, I've got one picture of me in my Cruising Park t-shirt that I could find, and I don't know if the rest of them are somewhere else or whatever, but when we interviewed Steve Sorensen, he sent me his. He sent me a picture of his, and he let me use that as my virtual background. So I've got mine, but your
Hey.
name came up a couple times. As
Hey, Steve, can I interject for a second?
Sure.
We're taking over the show. I hope you don't mind.
That's
Pretty
it.
much, Steve.
Hey, I wanted to interject because last week I had a friend come up to visit from Alameda,
Mhm.
and we were talking about the opportunity that Phil and I were going to have to talk to you today. And I wanted to make sure that I did a shout out to the Boys Club of Alameda via Jim Texera.
Jim Texera.
Yeah, Jim Texera. There's not a lot of shout out about Boys Club because they technically weren't part of the Park League kind of thing. But anyway, you wanted to make sure we let people know out in Alameda that Boys Club is not forgotten. So
Boys Club
I
is
wanted
not
to throw that out.
All right. Well, I got something for you. One of the nice things about doing these, if we were meeting in a coffee shop, I wouldn't be able to find stuff around the house right now. So I'm going to get up for just a second. And I've got something in my room here.
Shout out to Ed Canlin and Dale Roth for these shirts, by the way.
All right.
Classic.
All right. So I'm going to show you something. And Jim already knows about this because I took a picture and put it on Facebook maybe about a year ago.
Oh, bowling picture.
So this is 1970. Now,
Oh my God.
we're getting off the track here, but Alameda not only had a great baseball league in the parks, Mel's Bowl in Alameda had a great bowling league for kids. And at 8:30 on every Saturday morning, I was on a bowling team with Mike Darby, Dennis Darby, my brother Jim, who is right next to Jim Texera.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and this is
Oh my God.
this was a tournament in Hayward in 1971.
Wow.
So Jim, this is for you.
Okay, so hopefully this is a 5-hour show because I got to add on to that. Jimmy Texera told me in his garage he keeps a big box of old rags because he does a lot of car work and stuff. And he was digging in that box, and he found that same shirt that he's wearing in that picture.
Oh my
Right.
And it was after you had posted the picture. He
All right.
found it, and he said it was about this big. He couldn't even get it over his head. He said it was so small.
All right.
But anyway, he has the original shirt.
All right. Well, we're on our way to a great show today. This is fantastic. So, how are you guys? The one thing I want to ask first, getting started, I know we've already gotten the conversation going, but this has been a crazy year and a half with the pandemic and everything. And how are both of you doing? What are you doing to stay happy and healthy during the pandemic?
I'll always let my older brother speak first.
Okay.
All right, as it should be. Well, I'll tell you, Steve, number one, being retired has sure helped. My wife and I are both retired. And we didn't really have to make that many changes like other working people had to do. So we were already used to hanging out at home and just, carving out a little life of our own up here. But, living up here in Oregon, we're on the southern coast. So we have a lot of opportunity to hike near the ocean and hike the forest. We have a ukulele group we're part of. So we get to see them and play with them every week. And Lori's been swimming in our community pool. What else? And I've taken up the sport of pickleball.
Pickleball,
so,
okay.
I'm learning pickleball up here. So anyway, just staying active and getting out there as much as we think is safe, and we've got the environment to make it happen. So that's what we're doing.
Great. And how are you doing, Phil?
I'm doing okay. On the other end of John's world, I'm still working full time. My wife is also working full time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a finance officer for the public health department in Alameda County, so I get to work. We both get to work from home full time. She's in the dining room. I'm in the living room usually, and so far there haven't been any COVID related or non-COVID related incidences here at the house. So I guess we're doing okay.
Very good.
I'm a writer, so I belonged to a writer's workshop class before COVID hit. Mm-hmm. And we've been able to stay together online to do our work. And so we meet weekly to discuss our work and go through it and all that. So still being creative and still trying to, be connected. And for me, that's really the main thing is I've just tried to focus on being connected with family and friends and work and just making sure we don't lose contact very often. So that's mainly it.
That's a one blessing that we're at a time right now where we can get on Zoom or we can do things electronically to where we can still maintain relationships and, do a certain amount of business. So I think we've been fortunate with that. So that's good. So you're both Longfellow kids, and one of the great things about Park League Baseball is the leadership and the relationships. Who were your park directors when you were there?
Go ahead, Phil.
Oh my God. The first park director I think we had was Dave Svensson and Ann Russo. They were a good team. Dave was kind of the crazy, maniacal one. And Ann was kind of calm, quiet one. But we had so many. Dave Baldy was one of ours. Doug Bertson, Eugene Faziato, Tom Hawkins was one. And we had a great group of guys who were just a little bit older than us, maybe even John's age, like Bob Leach and Mike Bartell. Mm-hmm. Rick Fenstermaker was ours for a little bit. Mike Dennis, right?
Yep.
Cindy LaCroix, of course, was with John King. They were a great team. Mm-hmm. Kim Castillo was I think one of our park directors for a little while, and Karen Nicola, I think, who we all grew up with these people. So
right.
So there was quite a few, quite a fun, very good leaders for us growing up.
Right. That was one of the interesting things you said. They were just a little bit older. When I was about 10, I thought, wow, they're adults. And then I look back, they were like, the ones I had were like 19 or 20 years old. And they really, in the grand scheme of things, weren't that much older than all of us were. But they were leaders and they were great role models. Were there some particularly good role models for the two of you? Some that really stood out?
I'll take this one, Phil, to start. Well, my first park director and coach there was Dave Svensson. Mm-hmm. And although he was a very, very energetic guy, let's put it that way, he basically influenced me on the foundation of playing competitive sports because he was the first guy that actually took me and others under his wing to teach us, how to play sports. And I'll always appreciate that, he's the one who taught us to play as hard as we can and play it the right way and to be creative while you're out there, try to take advantage of every opportunity you can to win the game. But at the same time, there was always let's have fun. This is Park League after all. So we grew up with that attitude very young, and we've held that together pretty much through all our lives. You know, Phil and I playing a lot of sports together in adult league. We have the same attitude playing those games and that we did in the park. So I'll always be appreciative of Dave for giving us that foundation. So he was mine.
Yeah.
I will say that I'll add on to Dave too. He was kind of a Renaissance guy. He was a hiker and a fisherman, and he played the guitar. He could cook really well. He used to cook for us every once in a while.
Wow.
But John King for me was all about team. And again, Dave and John were pretty much the guys that seemed really old to us, I think.
Yeah.
But John was all about team, respect your team, and it's all about your team and your friends. I think having Mike Bartell as kind of our Sunday director every once in a while, he was so, we knew him. He was so famous, right? This talented baseball guy.
Right.
And he was our park director, and he was so talented, but he was also so competitive. And he would always play with us, and he taught us how to play Nicolani poker, and but he was so competitive on everything he did.
All those all-American sports.
Yeah, that's right.
But also Cindy LaCroix was really important for us as well, having another female person keep us all about, in respect with each other. And again, she was all about friendship and the people you knew and just taking care of each other. It was a really special time for us.
Right.
And I think my parents respected all of that as well.
Right. Yeah. I think Cindy mentioned when I talked with her a couple of weeks ago that she had a really good relationship with your parents. That that Longfellow Park wasn't just you kids going and playing, but your parents were supportive and had a good relationship with the people there. It sounded like.
Yeah. We only lived a block away from the park, so whether we were doing well or whether we were doing not so well, we were pretty close to contact if we needed to. But my parents were pretty active in the family night events that we had, as well as a lot of the parents around the neighborhood. So yeah, they weren't really there a lot, but when they were there, it was a huge impact for us.
Right. And I want to add too, in hindsight, they had the best babysitters that they ever could have had, because they worked. My mom worked 2 jobs. My dad worked swing shift. So a lot of the time, especially over the summer, we were at the park just like all the other kids in Alameda. We were at the park when it opened, and we were there when it closed. And in between, we lived close enough where we can go grab a bite to eat and then come back. And our parents had this trust that the park directors were going to, hold it together until they got a chance to come home and straighten us out.
Right.
But, in the meantime, they had a good communication between all the families around the Longfellow Park area and the park directors. So, they were always trying to bring everyone together, both parents and John and Cindy and Dave and Ann alike. They were always hosting like social nights and potlucks and all sports day. We'd have karaoke before karaoke was the thing. They'd bring their microphones and music, and everybody get up there, and the parents would be singing and dancing, and the kids would be playing basketball at the court. And, it was just a lot of fun social days like that brought the community together. So. It sounds too good to be true, but we really had that. So that was something a lot of kids, I think, that are now our age didn't have. Wonderful thing.
Trust me, we were not all too good to be true all the time. And so they also knew how to discipline us. They knew how to discipline us as well. So.
Yeah, they probably had to discipline you a little bit, but there were probably also some times when you and the other kids figured stuff out for yourselves. You either negotiated something, you might have come up with your own games or your own rules or just a way to work things out. And you probably had to learn how to settle disputes. And those were probably good skills that took you for the rest of your life. Would that be correct?
I'd say yes. I mean, also growing up in a large family, it was kind of like just your extended family. We were there all the time with all the same kids. So anytime there was a dispute, it was viewed by everyone else around us. So it was usually, trial by your peers.
Right.
It wasn't just the two people who were having the dispute. Everybody was involved, and it was kind of like, yeah, we all saw what happened. So you can make up or say whatever you want. Not that there weren't fights every once in a while, but even the fights, were pretty rare, I'd have to say.
Yeah. And, at the parks too, there was a hierarchy that was there, just like in a family, so typically it was the older kids, whoever initiated the game we're playing or whatever was going on. Usually the leaders of that game were typically the older ones, but even amongst the older ones, like Phil said, everything was transparent. So if you tried to get one over, everybody else would call you out, if something wasn't right. And there may have been a punch or two, and punch in the arm, punch in the gut or something. Usually, one time and it was over and we just went back to playing like it never even happened. It taught us a lot about just communication and getting along and working towards common goals and things like that. It was good, especially when the park directors weren't around. We had to manufacture that, and we managed to do it.
Good. Now you talked about Mike Bartell, and he was a great athlete. When we were at the parks, we kind of heard about kids from other parks. We play games, and leading up to the game, we'd say, "Hey, they've got this guy, and this guy's pretty good," or somebody else was doing good. Who were the kids that you heard about that were really good athletes when you were playing?
Well, in my age group, I think obvious number one that I could think about is Mark Trujillo. He's the only 6'4" 8th grader that we ever saw. And he was pretty intimidating no matter what sport you were playing against.
Big hair too.
Yeah, he had the fro going on, and he either pitching on the mound or playing center and basketball. Yeah, he was a pretty tough cookie to go up against. So he definitely sticks out in my mind. But there's also one more guy that I really remember, and he really wasn't big on playing the park league sports, but he was around because we went to school together on the west end of town. But his name was Jerome Shelton. And we went to school together and all through high school, and he was just the stud. Whatever he did, he was all league, most valuable, that kind of guy, that everything just came naturally to him. And he was somebody that really impressed me. Probably one of the best athletes I've ever seen in Alameda.
Right. He was a great player at Encinal. Yeah.
So there was,
as we got to know him at Encinal, he was the most soft-spoken, nicest guy in the world. And I ended up working with him a little bit, not too close together, after we were adults. And even then, every time we saw each other, it was just like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? How's it going?" And just so friendly, so nice.
That's great.
So
in my age group, it was Trujillo, Jerome Shelton, and then me. Yeah.
So everybody in the other parts.
That's what I remember. That's what I remember.
So when I talk with somebody in another part of town, they say, "Yeah, that John Canlin guy, he was a guy we always heard about."
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I have a few. So I already mentioned Mike Bartell, but I have to do a shout out to Rick Fenstermaker, because he showed me how to throw a football one time. And from that point on, I could actually throw a football like he did, which was kind of like like you were throwing a fastball. So you were basically throwing the same baseball form with a football. And anyway, he taught me how to throw a football.
Right.
But I do remember one time we were hearing about, and he was an older guy, but it was Willis Keller at Washington Park. We were hearing about Willis Keller, this beast of a guy. And so we actually made a little field trip to go back to Washington Park, which, by the way, John and I used to go to Washington Park when we were tiny. But anyway, we went to go watch Willis Keller play football. I don't know if it was a flag game or whatever it was. We went to go watch him play. He was really just the most amazing athlete. I mean, he was just relentless. He could not be stopped. He was just a beast. And at that the same token, just a year older than me was Mike Harrison at Washington. Same
Mhm.
kind of attitude about playing. Like nothing's getting in my way. Whatever the sport was, nothing was getting in their way. So
Right.
anyway, but
Yeah.
growing up, there were so many guys from different parks, like Rick Holgerson, of course, Mike Cooper. McKinley scared the crap out of us. They had Ed Simcoff, uh, Brett Connors, and they had Sanito brothers and Robbie Kahui, and they were amazing athletes. And Godfrey had so many guys. It was wild with the Reagans and Quintana and who else? Bonadonas were there. And of course, Cruzy was always our nemesis. They had Cooper, they had Kamisha, they had the Rattos, of course. Who else? Dean Henry and the Carlson brothers were there.
Mhm.
But we kind of knew everyone going around. And Washington Park had another scary location, right? They had Groves. Calvin Gregory was like the fastest guy in Alameda as far as we were concerned. They had Dave McClark, who was an Australian guy who was the first soccer kicker who played football and kicked in that soccer style. We couldn't believe it. Yeah. And who else? They had Mike Quintana, who really, he scared the bejesus out of me growing up. But he ended up being my center at Instant High when we were freshmen. And again, the nicest guy in the world. So as we got older, we got to know these guys, even though, they scared us like crazy. And I do have to throw a shout out to Steve Shabazian at Rittler, because that guy was all Wildcat. He was a good guy who became a longtime great friend of ours.
Good. So you had the kids that stood out, and then you mentioned a few parks that were, really had great teams. Were there any particular parks that were your biggest rivals?
Yeah, first thing that comes to my mind is Woodstock, because they were stone's throw from Longfellow, and a lot of the kids went to the same schools as we did, so there was always that built-in rivalry.
Yep.
Kind of like Encinal Alameda, but strictly on the West End. So it didn't matter if we were good that year or not good that year. The big game was we got to at least beat Woodstock, because we want to be able to wear those as medals when we went back to school and be able to talk
bragging
back
to
to them
school.
bragging
right. And we knew them all. So
yeah. So that was the one that first came up. But second, Phil already mentioned them, was the Cruzy. And I mentioned Cruzy because they're always so good. You guys are always so good, Steve. Every year, you guys are like the San Antonio Spurs. Just every year, the same system, the same guys, just, always this much better. And, we didn't lose every time, but we didn't win very much against them. But we always tried to make it competitive whenever we played against them. But, in my age group, again, with Donnie Ratto and Todd Wilcox and Dave Young, just to mention a few, it seemed like they had all-stars at every position. But yeah, we definitely, they gave it to us quite a bit when we used to play them in the 60s. Yeah.
And I think for us, we focused pretty hard on Franklin as well. Just, again, we didn't know those guys very well. We knew who they all were, and we knew how good they all were. But yeah, we tried to make sure we were on our game when we played those.
That's one of the biggest things, Phil, what you just said about how you didn't know them all that well, but you know who they were. One of the biggest things with Little League, and Little League has been great for Alameda. My son played and had a great experience, but it wasn't, it was, you'd be on a team where we lived on the West End, and then some of the guys on the team lived on Bay Farm, some of the guys on the team lived on the East End, and it was all mixed together. So by the time they got to the high schools, whether it was Encinal or Alameda or St. Joseph's, they all really knew each other already because they had been teammates all their lives. When we played the park leagues, that was who we were. You were Longfellow Tigers, I was a Cruzy Colt, and that was our crew. Those were the people that we spent all the time with, and it was an interesting difference.
Well, and you mentioned this. It's been mentioned on your show a couple of times that to this day, who you can see a 60-year-old guy and know exactly which park he's from.
Yeah.
Even the gals, we even knew the gals, like where they're all from.
That's right. That's right. So we talked about the rivalries. We talked about the great athletes, but you guys played long enough to where you had some great moments. John, what was your greatest moment playing Park League ball?
I think one that comes out was, of course, one year I made Player of the Week. So your picture's in the Times Star, and it tells everything you did. And I remember it. It was against the Franklin Eagles, and I went 5 for 6. I hit a couple triples and a bunch of ribbies, and they put in the paper, and I might even still have that clipping somewhere, because it meant so much to me at the time. So that one always comes to my mind. But competitively, I have one memory that really makes me proud, and that is one of the few times we beat Cruzy. And it was a basketball game at Longfellow Park, because sometimes you couldn't get in the gym, right? So the other team would caravan over, and so the game was us against Cruzy at Longfellow. And back in the day, that was a very, very big rivalry. So all of our community came out to watch the game. It was so cool. You're like, wow, look at all these people here. They're here to watch us play Cruzy in a Park League game. I mean, I wasn't thinking it as Park League, but just they're coming to watch us play. And it was a really, really tight game. It was nip and tuck the whole way. And right before the last buzzer sound or the whistle blew, I hit an outside jumper, and we won by 1 point.
Wow.
So I made the bucket, and everybody's cheering. And then one of our players, he was a Navy kid. Last name was Beatty. I forgot his first name. Phil might remember. There were 2 brothers. But anyway, he was our center. And he comes up to me after the game. He goes, "You're damn lucky you made that shot, because I was wide open underneath." I was like, damn, we just won the game. Why are you going to burst my bubble like that? So I'll never forget that, because as ecstatic as I was about winning, I saw, what? I saw him. I have to admit, when he told me that, yeah, I did see you, but I had the shot. I'll never forget that.
That's good.
And if I may bring up just one other thing, we were talking about Mark Trujillo, rest in peace, Mark. And we had a story that we laughed about ever since it happened. And this was in Little Coast, and he was pitching. And that day he pitched against us, and out of 21 batters, he struck us out 18 times. So we had 18 strikeouts, and I had the only hit, which was probably a blazing fastball that I could barely got my bat on, but I happened to poke it in the right field, right? Swinging late and the whole thing. Went in the right field, and because the right fielder was kind of out of place and not very quick, the ball kept rolling, and I managed to go all around the bases for a home run. And Mark would give me a bad time just for pretty much the rest of our lives when we see each other. He goes, that was no homer. That was a signal. And I would say, Mark, it said so in the box score. It was a homer, okay?
The box score doesn't lie.
We both knew it was a single at best, but that was a funny thing.
Yeah, Mark scared everybody when he was pitching. He threw so hard, but he was the nicest guy. And he was a coach.
We became fast friends because
he was a sweetheart.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Bigger than life.
Right.
It's funny when the ball's coming down at you when you're batting. You never see balls thrown downwards at you. You're like, what are these?
What is going on here?
Yeah. Anyway, those are mine.
Yeah. How about you, Phil?
I will say this about, we played all of our basketball games most of our basketball games were outside at Longfellow. And they used to set it up like a real basketball game. They had a timekeeper's table and a scorekeeper's table. They put benches out for the teams, and they had chairs all around the court for people to watch. That because so many people used to come watch. So I have 2 things, and Sean had about 6 of them.
Oh wait, I have more.
When we started going to the park, I was about 4th grade, 5th grade, but I was a 5th grader, And I didn't really like playing sports on teams that much. I like playing with everybody, but I didn't really want to be on the teams. But on one Sunday, I remember it was rain. It had rained in the morning, and so we were stuck in the house. And finally, the sun came out, and I took my basketball, went over to the park, and there was no one in the park, and everything was wet. And here comes Dave Svensson in his car, and he comes pulling in, and he looks at me, and goes, "What are you doing here?" I go, "I got to get out of the house." He goes, "Hey, you didn't do the hoop shoot, the Elks Club hoop shoot thing." He goes, "Today's your last day. If you want to do it, I have to turn everything in tomorrow." And I didn't want to do it. I'm like, "No, I don't really care. I don't want to do it." So anyway, he made me do it. And it was just he and I on the court. And back then it wasn't just free throws. You had to do like timed layups from half court. You had to shoot some free throws. You had to go around the world and shoot. You had to do a time thing where you took a shot and you had to rebound your own, come back out and shoot, keep doing it for like 30 seconds. And then you had to shoot from the top of the key for more points. Anyway, he made me do that. And he goes, you qualified. You have to go to Ensenada to represent Longfellow. And I'm like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. I didn't even want to do it. Anyway, so I'm kind of forced to go to Ensenada. I'm scared crap. I mean, I was scared out of my mind, right? But my oldest brother, Levy, was also doing it for the oldest age group. I don't even know what age that was. But we're going through and I'm doing okay, And finally, it's towards the end. I look over and I find out that Levy had just hit the first shot from the top of the key, which was 5 points. And he won. He was in first place. He was going to win the trophy for first. And Dave comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, your brother just came in first." I go, "That's amazing." And he goes, "Yeah, guess what? You're like in fourth place right now. So if you do well in yours, you might be able to win too." So I went, okay, I'm still like half interested. And finally I'm going around and he's going, "You're doing great, keep it up." I get to the very last part, which is two top of the key shots. So if you miss both, you got 0 points, obviously. And he said, if you miss both, you're gonna end up in fourth. I said, whatever, that's pretty good. He said, but if you miss the first and make the second, you get 3 points. You're going to be in second. And he goes, and if you make the first, which was 5 points, you're going to win. And so I went, I didn't even play basketball that well, right? So I get the ball and I just stand there and he's going like, "You can make it." And I went, "Boop," made it. So my brother Levy and I both came in first that year for the hoop shoot.
Oh, that's the family affair.
Yeah.
So
I will say this other thing, which is more of a team thing.
Yeah.
When I was in the 8th grade, which was all Little Coast age, 7th and 8th graders on a team, Longfellow went undefeated in every sport, football, basketball, and baseball. And we won all 3 championships undefeated. It was probably the most amazing group of young athletes. I mean, it was just, we were all so close. We were all great friends. We all went to school together. It was just so much fun. And they were just so talented. And it was fun to go through that. So hopefully some of those other teams from the other parks we're talking about us too.
That's right. That's right. So it was baseball, basketball, and flag football?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's a good memory. And what is it, 55 years later or something like that? You're still talking about it.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
I'll tell you, we saw John King at an Ensenada High reunion, and he lives in Lincoln, and he had to have help getting there, but he brought it up. He's the one that reminded us, like, "Oh, you guys won every game that year." And we were like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, look it up." So we did, and it was like, "Oh my God, we did." We didn't really realize it till later in life.
So the park directors had their talking points too. I mean, we're talking about stuff you did on the field, but they were there at the park when you guys were the champions in all 3 sports, and they're never going to forget that either. So that's a good thing. They're taking that with them their whole lives. Well,
yeah, hopefully it's true.
I think it is. So John and Phil, thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. What's next for you? What's on your bucket list right now? And I'll start with you, John.
All right. Well, Lori and I plan to do more traveling, as things open up a bit more, whether, we go by car, by train, by plane. One thing we want to do, and we hope to do it pretty soon, is there are some beautiful waterfalls in Oregon, and we want to take a trek and go visit as many as we can as we make kind of a loop around Oregon and make sure that we get to see those while we can. And then I've always had a dream of going to Ireland someday. So probably not this year, but maybe in the next year or two, we'll get everything set up to go there. And for some reason, that's just been a dream of mine to explore that country. So those are the kind of things we're looking to do.
All right. Sounds good. What about Phil? What about you, Phil? What do you have planned?
Bucket list. Well, first on my list, I hope to retire soon with my wife and figure out where we're going to settle next. That's coming up soon. Looking at, I have another book out there that I'm trying to peddle around, and hopefully I can get that book sold to an agent or a publisher soon. But I'm trying to switch my creative. I'm trying to write more to middle grade and young adults around sports stories that have kind of a social justice theme in it. And so I'm slowly converting to those types of stories, a lot of which revolve around so many of my memories from being in the park and things that we did. I have a huge goal. I wrote a story that I hope to become a graphic novel that my brother Ed, who's a graphic designer, and my nephew Dusty, who's also a designer, entrepreneur, artist. And I showed it to them, and they wanted to do a video, an animated video of this book. And so hopefully we can get that. We started it, and then everybody got so busy and COVID hit and all that. So hopefully we'll get back to that at some point. But really, I don't have a huge bucket list at this point. I'm hoping to retire and every day ride a bicycle with my fishing pole in it and go head out to the beach and fish away my life and think of stories while I'm sitting in the sand with my wife, hopefully, and just, enjoy life the rest of the way.
All right.
And think about all the park times we had.
Think about all the park time. Well, that sounds good. It sounds like you've got some great plans. I would like to hear more about your writing and your books, because those are subjects I'd like to read about. So we'll definitely keep in touch. So
Cool.
Anyway, thanks again for being on the show. And everybody that's watching, people that live in Alameda and people that live elsewhere that are interested in our Park League baseball and our park program, we really appreciate you watching and listening. And there is going to be another episode next week. So please continue watching. And as you're watching, if you'd like more information, you can go to my website at productivediscourse.home.blog. That's where you find information on what we're doing and where you can contact me if you'd like me to speak at your religious organization, service club, or community organization. So come back next week. But in the meantime, please like, share, comment, and subscribe so this message can go far and wide, and we'll find that shining needle of common ground in that haystack of fear.